Forget about Quill Volley's trillions of damage Spiritborn. This build can be summed up with one sentence.
This is Sparta!
Welcome to the best and most fun off-meta Spiritborn build with Concussive Stomp. The one skill that gets 600% damage when it's fighting against bosses or unstoppable enemies. And that has its own rune that casts bonus Concussive Stomps, plus an 85% chance for the stomps to actually hit an extra time. Oh, and you're getting more stomps if you're actually blocking attacks standing in all of the enemies. Plus, your stomp size is increased by 90%. Watch Grig closely behind me, just getting kicked to death. And then again, and then again, and just generally every boss that you actually meet. No matter which piece of content, the Pit, Infernal Hordes, Dark Citadel, Undercity, you'll be flying through it without relying on broken mechanics. And the whole rotation is about using our Concussive Stomp together with our Eagle. Because there's a very cool passive for Spiritborn that says if I use an ulti, I can use the prior skill, defensive for example, 3 times in a row for free without cooldowns. So I'll stomp, then Eagle ulti, and then I can stomp in a row for free. While I can use the Vortex to pull everything together and massively crit to reduce the cooldown. With the Armored Hide, I'll have maximum resolve for maximum damage, maximum block chance, and with the Ravager, I'm dish and dashing around the screen. And due to the key passive that resets cooldowns, you're just always getting all your cooldowns back, and we get 10 charges of our ulti, 10 Seeker charges. That's technically 30 Concussive Stomp versus a boss. And right now with all our multipliers multiplying, we're actually sitting at 12 to 17,000 critical strike damage. Whee! Disclaimer, this is a very efficient, fun, off-meta build. Not meant to push Pit 150, but meant to demolish any content that you'll meet in Torment 4 and make your friends ask, how the hell is he stomping everyone to death like that? How does this all work? Where to put your skills, and especially a Paragon board pathing. Pay close attention so you don't just throw your points away early. Skill-wise, we're going over Rock Splitter into 12 points in Crushing Hands in total for the maximum cooldown reduction, and yes, we're taking the bonus damage with a Resolve, as that is a 51% damage multiplier to our Crushing Hands on top of all the stomping we're doing. Get us some more vigor generation with bonus cost and more damage. Then we're getting only 1 point into focal point. More is not needed. The block damage reduction on our quarterstaff doesn't need to be higher. And then 3 points into Apex for that bonus damage versus vulnerable, double versus elites, with the Vortex into replenishing Vortex for that cooldown reduction. Interesting enough, if you do Vortex and then Eagle, you can also spam Vortex to keep pulling things together, especially good in Infernal Hordes. Now 1 point into Mirage and 3 points into Unrestrained Power, as we easily can get unstoppable with our Armored Hide. Then 5 points into Ravager for the minimum ferocity increase to 3, so 3 stacks, and also bonus vigor generation, with 5 points into Armored Hide to increase the uptime of 3 to 4.2 seconds, really useful, and the reinforced Armored Hide for some more block damage reduction. Doesn't hurt to have. 1 single point in Patient Guard for the 10% block chance, more doesn't help, and then all the points into Concussive Stomp, and yes, we have a chest with more ranks for more damage, and the Concussive Stomp gives us Barrier on top of actually the Crushing Hands, together with another 600% bonus damage. Then we have 2 points into Resilient for more max life and another 15% bonus damage versus knockdown enemies. And well, we knock them down with our Crushing Hands and we'll knock them down with our ultimate later on. That works fantastic. Now we're doing 30% more damage with our Jack skills, and everything we do are Jack skills at this point. Yes, technically we could take Furnace, but we don't really have the crazy amount of ferocity stacks to make this work. That brings us into the Seeker, 5 ranks with the knockdown and the crit plus bonus vulnerable, 3 ranks into Resolution for that bonus damage that we can essentially activate 10 times in a row, with 1 point in Sustenance and then 3 points into Intricacy that we can spam away the Concussive Stomp. Lastly, we're going for Prodigy's Tempo to reset the cooldown, and that's why we wanted to have the most ranks. Every 3rd consecutive cast, same core skill, is going to be 10% cooldown reduction plus 2% per rank. So another 24% cooldown reduction on top, 34 in total. Amazing. Spirit Hall we swapped over to Jack because we're essentially producing enough barrier already with all the stacking Concussive Stomps and the Crushing Hands plus some barrier generation on Paragon and gear. Therefore, the Gorilla Spirit Hull ain't needed anymore, and we can actually get the super bonus damage. Plus, we're going down here on Eagle for some more critical strike chance on movement, but mostly for the damage multiplier. Usually I would go for the Gorilla here that were permanently unstoppable, and if you want to, you can still go back to permanent Gorilla that will cut your damage by 30%. Every skill does 30% less damage. If you just want to be permanently unstoppable, that is possible. And the reason is that we're using the Harmony of Abawaka. According to your secondary Spirit Hull choice, your skills are also Jaguar, Eagle, Gorilla, or Centipede skills, and we get 30% more damage for this, which means that my Concussive Stomp is now a Gorilla, Jack, Eagle skill. Straight up 90% more damage on it. Boom chakalaka. That gets followed up by our most important piece, the chest, with ranks into Concussive Stomp, then Armor Dax, Crushing Hand Size for a bigger Crushing Hand Size, and Resolve Stacks. More Resolve Stacks, more Crushing Hands damage. Right now we're at 17, and that goes all the way up to the 51% bonus damage that the Crushing Hands can get with them. Amazing. And we have for more Resolve Stacks, more block chance to scale our crit damage. We'll get to that in a second. This one at 15% would be amazing. Since we have 17 Resolve Stacks, that essentially leads us to be getting another 170% block chance. And on our weapon, we're actually playing gain increased critical strike damage equal to 116% of your block chance. Blocking doubles this bonus for 10 seconds. That's how we're pushing a standard critical strike chance of 7,000 up to 17,000 and beyond. Boom, that's Armored Hide trigger. Already more, and then we can double this. Important here would be max life, Dax crit damage, then crit damage, and chance for Concussive Stomp to extra hit. This doesn't mean an extra stomp will be cast. This means your stomp just literally hits twice. You're hitting a 500 million stomp, you're hitting another 500 million stomp potentially. Just doubling your damage potentially. And in this case, we're playing the Zol Sick rune. Sick is for bonus Concussive Stomp, and Zol says invoke a skill from another class, which gives us 150 offering, and we need 250 to actually cast it. Now we just need to find a skill from another class to invoke, and in this case, it would just simply be Decrepify. Yes, invoke the Necromancer's Hard Decrepify, slowing enemies, reducing their damage. It's a 20% damage reduction of 40% slow, and they get executed if they're 10% and below. Huh, interesting. Huge damage increase because of the execution, and right now I just need to cast a skill cooldown, and I always cast skill cooldowns. I always cast, like always. If I do Concussive Stomp Eagle, that's 2, and then I do Concussive Stomp, Concussive Stomp, Concussive Stomp 3 times in a row, that's a 3 times cooldown skill. Into Eagle, into Concussive Stomp, 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 giving us stagger versus bosses, and we're just spamming cooldowns to get more stomps the whole time. 4 cooldowns spammed, 2 Decrepifies cast, straight up another Concussive Stomp. We're boosting this by getting more core skills and attack speed, and I would like to have critical strike chance instead of max life on these gauntlets. With more critical strike damage, I do have another Crushing Hand size on this one, which is a little bit overkill, but hey, I just really wanted to have the 100%. It would be better to have another Vortex on this one to pull together the whole room. And the aspect would be Retribution. Bonus 30% damage against stunned or knocked down enemies. Don't mind if I just have enemies knocked down the whole time. And our boots are currently getting us bonus block chance for even more block crit chance multipliers. And then blocking an attack from close enemies gives us more Concussive Stomps. Vortex size, resistance to all elements, maximum life, dexterity. Absolute must, works out fantastic. That movement speed killing elites, I would rather have movement speed. And the patterns are getting us but currently bonus armor. I would like to get rid of this one if I get a greater armor affix on these pants. We do need quite some armor right now that we can essentially boost the unyielding hit to give us the full 1500 bonus damage. And we do have quite some armor for this. And then we get Concussive Stomp size plus 90%. Crazy. And Resolve stacks to get our Resolve higher for more damage multipliers. If I had a greater FX armor and I could get rid of Juggernaut here, I could actually play the Duelist aspect to just get another 5 stacks of Ferocity. That would lead us to get even more attack speed, and it would lead to 8 Ferocity stacks in total, which might make us consider dropping the 3 points into Dominant for example, and we could get another 3 points into Furnace, which would be 1.5% increased critical strike damage per stack of ferocity, and that multiplies our critical strike damage up. Remind me, we have 17,000 already. We get 1.5% times 8 stacks, that's a 12% increase, and then we have 17,000 times 1.12, giving us another 2,000 critical strike damage like that. You know what they say, more is more. The amulet, super important, and that is the one of the unyielding hits. We want that 1,500 bonus damage on our weapon. And by the way, the weapon should be a quarterstaff for that intrinsic block chance bonus for even more crit. And here we get maximum life and then 90% total armor. That our armor goes all the way up because 3,800 times 38% gives us that 1,500 damage bonus. We get the resistance to all elements as well, then another total armor roll on it. And if I actually manage to get more greater armor affixes, I might be able to drop that total armor on the amulet and replace it through another stack of resolve for even more damage multipliers. Then critical strike damage on top and the unyielding hit aspect. Our first ring gives us crit chance, maximum life, and I don't need the resource cost reduction. It would preferably be even more attack speed, then critical strike damage, and 7 Seeker charges bonus. Yeah, that just makes us have Seeker charges beyond belief, and we'll do 30% more damage with active barrier. Now you do see our Ring of Starless Skies, but it's actually not needed. It gives us the 4 core skills, which will make Crushing Hands more efficient. Crit and attack speed amazing. The lucky hit chance December is terrible. Now the thing is, if you don't have it, just play the Ring of Midnight Suns, because this Ring of Starless Skies allows us to have infinite resource with the Paragon board, with the Convergence node. But the Ring of Midnight Suns does the same. So either you're going to have a more costing Crushing Hands and you're able to just get your resource back with the Ring of Midnight Suns, or you just reduce the cost tremendously with the Ring of Starless Skies to be infinite as well. This is kind of like the same, Ring of Starless Skies performing better, Ring of Midnight Suns being an option to just do it otherwise. They're going to say, Pony, your resistances look terrible. And they do, but it doesn't matter because you have infinite barrier, and barrier interacts with resistances weirdly that as long as you have barrier, they don't really blast through that. Now, if you do not have barrier and you would, for example, walk into a pool of poison, well, then good riddance. But as long as you're doing damage and there's an enemy, you'll always be resistant to everything, more or less, as you just overproduce barrier like crazy. For our mercs, we're having Variana give us bonus attack speed and movement speed with even more bonus attack speed. And then we're going to be using Rahir to essentially crater things and pull them bonus together on all our pull togethers. Could probably swap Rahir out to actually give us Fortify, that we build up good amounts of Fortify as well. It comes every 11 seconds. We might actually be able, with the barrier we have, to fully fortify out for another layer of damage reduction. And for the gem in our gear, we're using amethysts for barrier generation, that the actual barrier we generate gets over-generated to not only be 30%, to actually go all the way up to 100%. And that is 4 of those gems in our gear, plus the Paragon board I'm about to show you with the pathing. And the most important part will always be focus on the legendary nodes first. If you, let's say, have only 100 points, you're going to just go through with a minimal amount of points here, activating the maximum life, then spin the node to be the closest to the board attachment gate, activate it, leave on the side again, spin the next board closest to the activation gate to get it again. And the first 2 you want are Sapping for the bonus Vigor Restoration and Vicious Shield. That is the most damage to get. And I think with like around about 50 points, 60 points, you should almost be able to activate both of these straight away for the insane boost. Then you're going to activate the other 2 legendary nodes. And as you then get more points, you can slowly start flashing out things. Very important here is the fitness glyph, because it multiplies our all crit damage. So if you have fitness glyph on 100, you're going to get around 20% more critical strike damage. And that's a multiplier to all your critical strike damage. So the 17,000 we're getting times 20%. Plus, it gives us a huge crit damage multiplier anyways on 105 dex nodes. Next up is the sapping board, and that sapping with Ring of Starless Skies is Infinite Vigor, or the Ring of Midnight Suns, plus a 30% damage multiplier on the Spirit Glyph for even more crit damage and damage to elites, and a crit damage increasing multiplier as well. We get a lot of resistance to all elements here with attack speed and also maximum life. That brings us then upwards into the Vicious Shield board. And the Vicious Shield board is second, that we get all the decks for the damage reduction double here with even more max life. And then we get tons of barrier generation as well to push our barrier generation further, and the Outmatch Glyph for bonus damage against non-elites and bosses, and to multiply up that critical strike damage and the damage while barrier a lot. Now moving into the Infighter board, that gives us another 18% attack speed and 9% damage multiplier with some resistances. The Colossal Glyph for resolve stacks equal to damage multiplier. We have 17 stacks in the current build. If I get everything masterworked up the right way, we'll have 25 stacks, which is a 50% damage multiplier. Just like that. Downwards into the Revealing board, up to a 30% chance to knock down vulnerable enemies. We're knocking down everything anyways, but you deal 30% increased damage to crowd control enemies. And yeah, we always crowd control them with something. Either we slow with that Decrepify around us, we knock them down, we stun them, we got them completely under control. Bonus attack speed, bonus life, and then also the Headhunter Glyph, where we're trying to max out with all the points left. And here you're going to mix and match. Do you take Int or Strength in regards of what you still need to hit a respective goal? You want the 4% more max life, then instead of taking Dex here, you're going to be moving more into Intelligence, as the fully leveled up node kind of boosts this into the double values that you can easily just get the stats you do actually need. That's also where the Harmony of Abawaka helps with the all stats attribute to get things further and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, do we have with the Crushing Hands, Concussive Stomps? And yes, before you ask, you could also go full into Crushing Hands and just go for trillions of overpowered damage multipliers. But that's not the fun build we're doing here. We're maxing out Concussive Stomp. If you're now looking for more Season 6 tips and tricks, well, there's a video that got you covered. Have a fantastic good day. Take care.